Welcome to Resume Preparation, Part 1, the Basics. I am Dr. Chadwick Royal, an Associate Professor in the Department of Counselor Education at North Carolina Central University. And one of the first points I would like to make when we discuss resumes is the intention of creating a resume, and that is to primarily help you to obtain a job interview. It is not intended for this document to actually produce a job. It's merely to get your foot in the door and have someone pay attention to you. Primarily the thing that we want to consider for resumes is the appearance. It should be error-free, and this is extremely important. There should not be any spelling or grammatical errors. And you can pretty much guarantee that if there are errors of any kind, that this can keep your document from moving on in the process, and your potential for a job opportunity will end at that point. I would recommend that you avoid any fancy fonts. You might want to consider using just a basic font like Times New Roman or Arial. And I would also suggest that you keep from using any graphics unless it's part of the job in which you seek such things as a graphic designer or an artist of some sort. And for those situations, you might actually want to consider a portfolio as opposed to a resume. I would also suggest that you consider using a template when drafting a resume, something of this sort. The image you're looking at, those lines that you see disappear once it's printed. I use templates all the time in order to keep things organized and make sure that things line up exactly. When distributing your resume, go ahead and spend a little extra money to purchase some high quality paper to send those documents in a hard copy format. Of course, the content in a resume is also important. And we'll take a look at some important elements in a resume. What you see is just a sample one here. It's a generic form that I have created for a client in the past, and I have attempted to remove all identifying information and locations. The most important thing, obviously, is to include your name, a full name. Also include contact information, your address, a mailing address for which you would expect to receive professional correspondence. Also, a telephone number in which you might be reached, and a professional-looking email. Any email in which you might have a nickname of any sort, I would suggest that you avoid using. You might even want to consider going and creating an email in which your address is primarily just your full name. Obviously, you are including professional experience. You might include only a selected amount if you have an extensive work history. If you're straight out of undergraduate school or high school, then you would in fact want to include all of your work experience. You do want to include the dates for which you've worked. Depending on how long you worked in an environment, you would include the month in addition to the year. And we work in a chronological format in which the most recent job is at the top. And what you see here is the name of the organization in which this individual worked, the location, and the job title. And this particular job title indicates project manager. And you see the listing of types of duties that were required for this project manager. The phrasing is particularly important, and you want to make sure that each bulleted point under that job and related task for that job, that the phrasing of those bulleted points mirror each other, using the same types of language. And here's another example of a different task or job title for this same individual. This was a different job. You see management of all construction projects, communication with architects, selection and management of all subcontractors, supervision of, evaluation and compliance with. All the phrasing matches in these bulleted points. And I would also like to point out that you see that bulleted point supervision of 40 construction workers, I would suggest you try and quantify anything that you can, anything that's possible to be quantified on your document. This is a second page of the same resume, and I've heard from lots of people that truly believe that resumes should be in one page. I personally disagree with this. You probably would want to limit it to perhaps 2 pages, but there is no written rule that a resume should only be 1 page. So this is the second page of the same individual, and we're going to take a look at some experience that was in the past. Namely, this is a job that this individual no longer holds. So you see the dates of employment there. You also see a similar formatting where you have the job title, the particular tasks for this job, and what I would point out with this particular example is that the phrasing and the tense is now past tense. So you see purchased existing hardware store franchise, purchased and renovated. So these tasks were in the past. You would also want to include, if it's relevant, trade knowledge and particular skills that you have, specific skills, any professional recognitions or honors or academic awards that you might have received along the way, any licensure or certifications that you have. All these require separate headings. And most importantly, education. You want to include the institution in which you attended. This would include a high school if that is your highest level of education. Include the name of the institution and the location and your major. And also make sure you include dates of attendance. When you're drafting your document, also pay attention to headers and footers. I like to include a footer with each resume that I draft, including the person's name at the bottom and a page number out of a total number of pages. And this is in the instance that pages get shuffled for a person that's reviewing the resume. You wouldn't want it to get lost and separated, and then that individual reviewing the resume have no idea whose papers belong to whom. And the most important thing, the number one important thing when it comes to drafting a resume is include factual information. No lies. You can pretty much guarantee that if you are caught in providing false information on a resume, that you will no longer be considered for that job, or you can even in fact lose that job once you've obtained it. Please consider tailor-making your resume each time you send it out, and it should be specific to what job you seek. It's okay to have different versions of your resume. They should be specific to the job you're seeking. Feel free to change it as needed. Don't rely on just having one version of a resume that you send out to every job you're interested in. If jobs are slightly different, then slightly change your resume based on the job you seek. Always update it at least every 6 months.